Hi, my name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. And I haven't found Nesh to have a drink. Well, I'm in my 46th year. It's good to be here. Thank you. Yeah. I want to welcome you all here, and also I want to thank the people who have birthdays this month, and congratulate them for that, and the newcomers. People just picked up a white chip, and thanks Sergio for driving me up here. I'm old and infirm, so I need people to do so. Yeah, I know. It's sad. It's a sad situation. It's over for me. Save yourselves, And that was a wonderful introduction. I want to make sure I understood because, my hearings, you said you didn't have an opportunity to share and introduce me the way you wanted to introduce me. And what I heard is you said something like, so here's Russell. I want you to know the first time I heard him, I wasn't thrilled. So I think that requires a certain amount of thought, to give an introduction like that. Well, it's better than the guy in Buffalo who introduced me as, here's Russell, he's an acquired taste. So it's like, Jimmy asked me, he says, you're talking about the four-step tonight. I said, don't give me, I can't handle pressure. I handle pressure. It'll be in there somewhere, and, I'm 77 years old. I'm doing the best I can. So what's that? What is all this? What's going on? The table's moving.
Everything.
Yeah, look at this. Everything's wrecking everything. So it's good to be here. So I'm gonna talk about a few things. I'm thinking that there's a possibility that I might be able to bring it home. So by the time I'm done at the end of this deal, the fourth step will be buried somewhere in there. You understand what I'm saying? That's the best I can do. So so here's the deal. So where I'm at, so you can understand where I'm at, or maybe you won't understand where I'm at, or, in the Bible, they have this great line. The Lord always used to say, let those who have ears to hear, and eyes to see. So, you could be listening to somebody. I've listened to many people who I'm sure had great stories, and I didn't hear anything, didn't get it. You know what I mean? And so that's happened to me many times. So I'm just going to throw out my story, and whoever it hits, and I sometimes I talk about things and people get disturbed. It's like, you throw a rock into a sea of dogs, the one that yells the loudest is the one that gets hit. So I'll talk about Jesus or something. Somebody gets, so isn't that a violation of the traditions? Don't start me on the traditions, you know what I mean? They're good, they're okay. Look, I hear that, aren't they doing this new thing, this new big book thing? What do they call it? The plain language big book?
Yeah.
Yep. The language wasn't plain enough. I came in 46 years ago. It was fucking plain enough for me. You know what I mean? Why do you gotta keep on? So T.S. Eliot. Some of you have never heard of T.S. Eliot. He's a writer. He has this quote, which is I think appropriate for Alcoholics Anonymous and for people to think of. Just sort of, you think about things. Maybe it'll come up. And this was the quote. And I'm not saying it was even about AA. It was just a quote, And he said, let me ask this. When you go to AA, I haven't even gotten to the funny part, This is why you need to pay attention. Because, when you're dealing with a man who has dementia, what happens is it's not going to be a straight line deal, I not only have alcoholism, but I have dementia. And I'm insane because I have alcoholism. It's part of the deal. And so what happens is I'll start off on something that'll make a hard right, And you all know, well, wait, where's he going? I was following him in here, and he made a right. Where's he going? And then I'll make a left, and I'll take a U-turn. And the only question you have in your mind, and quite frankly, I have in my mind, is I'm ever going to get back. You know what I mean? But if you're an alcoholic, you can get something even out of that. You understand what I'm saying? I heard a guy, I don't know what he said, but he was fucking insane. You know what I mean? And they liked him. You know, I don't know what it is. That's why I like AA. So what was I talking about? You see what T.S. Eliot, this young lady, what's your name?
I'm Rose.
You're Rose?
I'm Rose.
Now, Rose, listen to this. You're gonna be my gal today. You pay attention, because every once in a while sometimes I do this with this guy. I'm gonna turn to you and I'm gonna say, what was I talking about? So you gotta, none of them are paying any fucking attention to anything I'm saying. They're just watching the train wreck, you know what I mean? They're just, I gotta see what's going on. They're watching the show. But you, unfortunately, have to try to pay attention to this thing, because I'm going to rely on you, you know? I'm going to rely on an alcoholic, you know? So that's something right there. So T.S. Eliot has this quote, okay? And he said, now, wait, I'm going to make another right. Because when I made the right, I forgot what I was going to say. But now I remember. So when I used to go to meetings, you know, you hear a lot of the same thing at meetings, and repetition is good. As a matter of fact, not only is repetition good, that I have to see things and relearn things over and over and over and over and over again. That's me. Because it just doesn't stick, you know? Because I'm crazy. That's part of the craziness. It doesn't stick. So not only do I have to hear things over and over again, I had to have a situation where every once in a while, I had to hear something new and different. Because I'm like a child. I'm a spoiled child. I'm very easily bored. So if every meeting I went to, they said the same exact thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with worshiping Alcoholics Anonymous. You know? I mean, there will come a time in your life. Look, I'm just telling you my experience. You know, I think when the Lord was talking to Nicodemus, he said this great line. I love you. I stole his lines. He was doing a step meeting. He was sponsoring this. I steal lines from the Bible. And here's what he said, because this is the truth. He said, I'm telling you what I see and what I know. And you guys don't believe me. So how can I talk to you about anything? So you don't have to believe anything I say. You don't have to understand anything you say, but understand this. I'm talking off the top of my head because I can do that. I don't have to bring the books in anymore. I don't have to underline them and do all that, because I'm a product of Alcoholics, and I'm a product of the Big Book. I'm a product of this program. I'm not going to tell you that I was going to 3 or 4 meetings a day from the time I came in 46 years ago, which I was, but that's the way I did it. I'm not going to tell you I sponsored everything. I'm not going to tell you I did every step in the world. I'm not saying that I was a stark raving sober. I'm not saying I was in the group backward chairman for 2 years in a row, and 8 years on relay, and I'm going to lay out all the things I've done. You can just look at what I'm doing. That's my life. I am a product of focusing on AA and thinking it's the greatest thing in the world. So if I say anything tonight, which leads you to be, man, I think he's dissing AA, you know? It's only because I am obligated to tell you about my experience. And if I tell you that I know of people in AA that have done all the steps and done everything I did and were AA perfectionists and knew the traditions backwards, forwards, and in Chinese and drank again, I would be telling you the fucking truth. And if I told you that Bill Wilson, the co-founder of AA, as wonderful as he was and as divinely as inspired as he was, that every book he's read, I've read backwards and forwards, I'll quote him and everything like that, and it helped me. But in the end, all that failed him. You can get upset, say, why is he being, that man's dead, he did a good job. You can worship AA like, yeah, you can worship Bill Wilson as Bill sees it, Bill this, Bill that, as I did for 10, 15 years. But then I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that when he had 20 years sobriety, he started experimenting to see whether the LSD would help him, but at 20 years sobriety, he wrote something called The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. And a 4-page thing, you need to read that. And I'll tell you something, I have to give him a lot of credit. It takes a lot of credit. How does a guy who's known as the, when you've been around a lot and you got a lot of time, and back then 20 years was a lot of time. He was the longest guy with an AA. When you have that much time and you write down on paper, I have 20 years sobriety, and I'm so depressed, and the program isn't working for me, and I don't know what's wrong with me, because you could fake it. You could be dying inside, and if you just have 20 years and you're the co-founder of AA, nobody will know it. You just be a big shot, you know what I mean? Now, you could tell your sponsor, if you had, you could tell Dr. Bob, you could tell these people all that, that kind of stuff, but to write, to feel compelled to put down on paper the fact that you're doing horribly, that you're the co-sponsor, and not only are you doing horribly, you see tons of old timers that are dying out there, and then say, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know how to help myself. And put it on paper. Publish it, in the, what's that pamphlet we use, that thing they hand out? Grapevine. To publish it in the Grapevine for everybody to see. That takes a lot of guts, courage, or, really belief in God. I'll tell you, to do that stuff. And then to say, and this is what he said, I got it all wrong. I screwed it all up. And then to hear that when Dr. Bob, who was in AA and entitled to be in AA and fit the definition of AA, when Dr. Bob, who was the co-founder, there's a real question about who sponsored who, Dr. Bob, who didn't write the books, as Bob sees it, as Bob does that, as Bob does this. Very humble man. As a matter of fact, Bill Wilson wrote down, Dr. Bob was far more humbler than I could ever be. To hide that shit from Alcoholics Anonymous is to lie about the program of recovery. And I'm not going to lie to you. And when you hear that Dr. Bob's last words when he was dying said to Bill Wilson, let's not screw this all up. Let's not screw this up. Don't screw this thing up, Bill. Keep it simple. And know Dr. Bob's background and know that there was no question in my mind what Dr. Bob was saying is it's all about God. It's not about AA. It's not about the traditions. It's not about the steps. There is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. And then they give us this program, which is designed to get you to the point where God becomes the central fact of your life. And there is no middle of the road solution. And the only people that get upset with this sort of stuff, where it says, and therefore we wrote a book, and its main reason if we write the books is to help you to find this power, to help find. So, of course, we have to talk about God. And here's where agnostics get upset. So if somebody comes up to you and they're pissed off because you talk about God and tells you you're killing newcomers, understand you are not talking to a believer. You're talking to what Bill Wilson ultimately became when he was working. You're talking to an agnostic. You're talking to somebody who won't say he's an atheist. He'll say he believes in God, but he really doesn't. Because as a matter of fact, if he goes to a meeting and hears somebody talking about God, it makes him uncomfortable. You understand? And you know what I've learned in this deal is the only people that make it are people that will put themselves in a position where they're uncomfortable as fucking hell. And only babies, only children suck their thumb and whine and walk out the door saying, I can't take this. You know who does that? Alcoholics that want to drink. Don't drink when you go out there. I love that guy. I'm sorry. That was a cheap laugh. I was going for a cheap laugh, and I apologize. But I'm not really that sorry because it was easy. It was easy. It's too easy. Don't you do what I do. Don't do what I do. And so when I hear Bill Wilson said, I screwed the whole thing up. And this is what he says, I was too dependent on people, places, things, and on Alcoholics Anonymous. And to ultimately understand is that everything you read in the book, all the steps, is designed to have you have a relationship with God that will solve not only the drinking problem, because, AA will solve the drinking problem. Everybody stays sober in AA for a season. They stay sober for 90 days or 10 years or 20 years. And then most people drink again or commit suicide or get 25 years or 30 years and they're miserable. And you know how I know that? Because like Farmers commercial, I know a lot and I've seen a lot, and you want something? The people I tend to mentor are guys that call me up with 25 years and 30 years and they're miserable and suicidal. And it's always the same reason. They know how to do the steps. They're still going to meetings. You know what I mean? But some, they have no relationship with God. None, zero. It's not hard to see. That's what Bob Smith saw with Bill Wilson. And that's what Bill Wilson wrote down, sort of, kind of, because it's kind of hard when you write Appendix 2 and tell people that, you don't really have to worry about the God thing and it says you understand it. It's kind of hard when 20 years later you got to say I was wrong about that too. You know what I mean? So I didn't expect him to come totally clean on that, but it'd be hard for me when when people are clapping for you and celebrating the fact that aren't you the one that put in after talking to that atheist to make sure he didn't, because I don't know whether you know this, but one of the problems with alcoholism, the drinking is but a symptom. It's only a symptom. The real disease centers in your mind, okay? And one of the problems with the real disease is we will whore ourselves out just to get people to like us. I'm not talking about you guys because, as I said, this is a very spiritual group. You guys are spiritual, not religious. But I'm talking about myself. I'm not spiritual. I used to be spiritual, and I grew out of that. Now I realize I'm a material man in a material world. And if I don't hug God and get involved in Him and share what I'm supposed to share, because each alcoholic, in his own language and his own point of view, is supposed to talk about how he developed his relationship with God. And you know something? I don't apologize for that. And you know why? Because we never apologize for our faith in God. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. Instead, they let Him demonstrate in their lives through their testimony to other people what He's done for us. And then we immediately begin to outgrow fear. Now, would you like to outgrow fear? Or would you like to live a life of fear or a life of faith? And so people are like, well, how can you talk like this? And they mean, well, how can I not? I mean, the big book says one of the things that happens to us if we're really sober is to lose fear of people and economic insecurity. If I'm worried about whether you like me a lot, if I'm so worried about you, about some guy in the front row who isn't even paying my Visa bill. Now, if there was a guy who was paying my Visa bill, I might be a little concerned, you know what I mean? Because I'm not sure I've gotten rid of the money fear, you know what I mean? But I'm really worried about if I have to filter myself because what if the 12-step club doesn't like me or something? What the hell do I have that I call sobriety? What the hell do I have? I mean, what difference does it make if you can't make the difference? If you're just one more guy who says, well, I think that's a violation of stuff. Well, I think it's that. It's all bullshit if you're 20 years sober and you're going to meetings, you did all the stuff and you're helping people because everybody knows, intensive work with other people, and all that sort of stuff, if you don't have a relationship with God. Because there will come a time in your life, like there came a time in Bill Wilson's life, you'll have no defense against the first drink because your defense is going to have to come from God and you won't have Him there. There will be a time in your life where you'll be in the MRI in about 25 or 30 or 40 minutes and they're going to be checking you out for cancer or something like that. That's going to be happening. And you're going to be all alone with those earphones on that don't block out anything if you've ever done that. You young guys have never done that. and they're going to be checking you out to see whether you're going to live or die. And you know something? The 12-step group ain't going to be in there with you. And you know something? The 4th step ain't going to help you. Neither is the 5th step. And you're just going to be sitting there by yourself, and you're going to start for the first time in your life getting claustrophobic and worrying about stuff. And then you discover how important it is to have the Lord on your side. Somebody there with you that you can trust, that you're absolutely sure of. That becomes you're going to understand what the great fact really means when they say, because I look at the sentences. Sentences are, it says this: God must become the central, for this is a great fact, and nothing less than this. Now, you're an alcoholic, you can make up anything you want in your mind, any imaginary deal you want, but there's nothing less than this. God's going to become the central fact of your life. What does that mean? That means the only thing you really think about is God. That's what it means. It means the only thing you think about is God. There may be some other things that come into your life, like money, property, prestige, and everything, but the number one thing you think about, you always turn to, is God. That's the central fact. You know, not at the blonde at the front row or any of that stuff. You know what I mean? Not the guy, not your, you know, that's the number one thing. And you're convinced. Convinced means you're absolutely convinced. You're so certain of this that if some guy starts saying you shouldn't do this, everything like that, you don't pay any attention to him. You're convinced that he lives, God lives in your heart and your mind in a way which is miraculous. You're amazed. Every day you wake up, you're amazed about how much you're thinking about God. You're amazed. And you're convinced that he lives in your heart and mind in a way which is indeed miraculous, doing for you what you can't do for yourself, which is another way of saying that the only reason you're sober is because of God. Bill Wilson said, the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease. I got to keep talking about it and telling other people. He said that right after he had that spiritual experience where the wind came in the spirit. So this is the God of the prophets. He said that right after that. A couple of weeks later, when he wrote the big book, he said, but soon worldly clamors blocked out his presence. And a few months after that, he went up to Harriet Saberling and said, I think we're talking too much about God and religion. We shouldn't do it. And Harriet had to remind him, Bill, the only reason you're sober is because of God. Stop worrying about alcoholics and pleasing alcoholics. They've been pleasing themselves all their lives. You better start worrying about pleasing God, because he's the only defense you have. And if you don't talk about God, you might as well be the Rotary Club. And she says, soon he agreed, which he said, okay, he said, get off my back, I'll do it. And 15 years later, Dr. Bob's saying, Bill, don't screw this thing up, keep it simple. Because for him, it was all about doing the program and the steps, which, by the way, kept me sober long enough so that I could hit bottom again, an emotional bottom again, and start looking to where I had to look at. So, as T.S. Eliot says, oh my God, do you have any idea how tough that is for me to get back to that, dear? And I know that's God. I know that's not me. Rosie, were you rooting for me? Thank you very much. Thank you for your faith. I appreciate that. This is what he said. We will not cease our exploration, because every time most of us go to meetings, every time I went to a meeting, I'm exploring, I'm searching. I want to hear a new thing. I used to follow guys around, you guys old timers, so I had to hear something new that I hadn't heard before. And something very often I did. Sometimes you get new things because of the problems that hit you in your life. Many times you get new things because you're being crushed, like the book of James says, which is one of the books they found out. You can get all sorts of new things. Somebody asked me tonight, Lucas, I think, asked me. He said, you still get new stuff that you didn't know a week before. I said, every flipping day. If you love God and you believe in God and he's the central factor of your life and God is major and everything like that, how could you not be rocketed every day and learn new things? How could you that stop? But for many people, it does. And so what T.S. Eliot said is this. He said, we will not quit our exploration and our searching to figure out what's going on here. And in the end, we'll find ourselves where we started, having known the place for the first time. Which, by the way, has something to do with the fourth step, too. Just want to throw that in, so at least I got that in there. So, you see, say, ever since Bill Wilson got out of the hospital and said, the Lord has been so wonderful in curing me of this terrible disease, and started hanging around with Hank Pothurst or whoever was the atheist who said, well, you can't talk about God. We got atheists here and everything like that. And he changed that. In order to compromise that deal. You with me? When AA, the first 4 years in AA, you couldn't go to a meeting, read Dr. Bob McGill Times, unless you got on your knees and you gave your life to God in front of everybody in AA. None of this, anybody want a white chip stuff? You got on your knees and gave yourself to God. You did the third step before you got in the first place. Read it. It's in our, quote, conference-approved material. Like Dr. Bob said, he said, you know what he said? He said, the books we find absolutely essential are 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, and the book of James. First things first, it means seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. I mean, the whole thing was out of the Oxford group about the Bible and everything. That was the whole thing for the first 4 years. Then they wrote a book that says, rarely have I seen a person fail who has thoroughly, look up the word thoroughly, followed our path, and that was their path. Because there was no big book. There was a Bible, they had the upper room, which is based on the Bible, that's what it's all about. And then Bill Wilson wrote a book because, you know why? Because he really did feel we have to stop talking about God and religion. That's where his heart really was. Because he wanted to build all these hospitals and go before Rockefeller and everything like that. And he didn't want people laughing at him. Just like you don't want people laughing at you. Just like you're scared of other people. Just like you lie to yourself your whole life and say, I don't give a shit about other people. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say. When your whole life is caring what they say. Where you have a fight with somebody or say something, you do something, and you sit around in the car sober, 10 years sober, saying, I'm an asshole, I ought to kill myself, I wish I was dead and everything like that, because you can't stop thinking about what they're saying about you, what you're thinking about you, what they're telling other people about you. Your whole life is spending money you don't have, to buy shit you don't need, to impress people you don't even like. And you tell yourself over and over again that you don't care, hoping to somehow to convince yourself that you really don't care, and you never can convince yourself because you're diseased and you're delusional. And what the book says, you not only have a drinking problem, you're delusional, which means, by the way, according to the big book, because God forbid I wouldn't want to break a tradition, which means, by the way, you can't separate the truth from the false. The truth, you can't handle the truth. You can't separate your alcoholic thinking and life. It's the only thing that you know. It's your alcoholic thinking, your life. You can't get away from it. So you can stop. Now, let me tell you something. Just going through the motions, doing the steps, everything, can keep you physically sober for a long time. I'm telling you, I've seen it happen. It happened with me. Happened with Bill Wilson. And you can still go off the plank because you miss the fact that mere sobriety is not enough. And so here's the problem. So Bill Wilson wrote Appendix 2. Then the guy who told him to do Appendix 2 died of alcoholism. And he wrote that. He got applauded for it by everybody in AA. You know why why everybody likes him? Because no alcoholic wants to hear about that. They don't want to hear about that stuff, So he wrote that out. And then AA kept on making progress by getting more and more psychological, more and more do the steps, more and more do that, which is all good. All that stuff is good. I did that stuff to get me sober, got me where I got to go. That's what he did. And now they're making even more progress. They're going even farther. They're writing the plain language. Whatever that is, that ought to be interesting. God, I can tell you this. It's not going to look anything like what they did the first 4 years. Because they want to make sure everything's plain language, so it's nice sanitized, pasteurized, So nobody gets pissed off and walks out of AA. You know what I mean? And you'll never be embarrassed. And here's my problem. Because of what I've been through in my life, which I share, where they're going to the right to make progress, I'm going to the left in reverse. I'm a reverse alcoholic. I'm trying to get back to where I began in 1935 to 1939 when they got it right. You know? You know why? Because the people that I know that have what I want, that's what they did. They didn't go to the right, they went to the left. They went in reverse. You understand what I'm saying? So at least you hear it from one guy. Don't worry. 90% of the speakers you hear, you might be saying to yourself, I never heard this shit. And that's because I'm definitely the minority position, okay? But you deserve to hear from the minority position. So here's the problem. If that's true, if I'm delusional, if I can't separate the true from the false, I mean, the booze may go. When does the delusion go? When does that happen? When do you stop lying to yourself? When do you really start seeing yourself and who you are? So I got about 10 minutes and I can do this in 10 minutes. I'll do it real fast, you know what I mean? And I'm just going to give you an example. And I've given you this example before, but I can do it again because it's for like a different reason. So I say to myself one day, I meet a girl, and which wasn't hard because all I did my whole life was searching for her. You know what I mean? The one that would fix me. And unfortunately, the fixes were always temporary. But in any event, I'm looking for this gal. So a gal walks into I'm about 20, 21 years old or something. A guy walks into a classroom, and she's beautiful, you know, and I have to add that. You know what I mean? All alcoholics have to add stuff like that. She's beautiful. And I say, man, if I only had this woman, I'd be okay. You know, I know you men can't identify with that. But I mean, that's actually what I did. And I put a full court press on changing my entire life around and becoming a different person, going after a different job, different career. So when I met her parents, anything like that, I could insinuate myself into my life, and I could grab that, I could shoot that gal, put her in a bag, and take her home and mount her on the wall. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're laughing. You don't know what it's like. Let me tell you. And I was successful. We got married, had a baby, had a house in Miami Beach on the Lagos Country Club golf course. I was a division chief in the state's attorney's office trying, murder cases and stuff like that. And I had the world like crazy. But like a used car, because she's just a possession, she's just a woman. This is when the gals start getting real squeamish, because they don't appreciate my honesty. I started looking at other women. You know what I mean? I started looking at other women because there's nothing wrong with her. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. I started looking at other women. And I just stay in the bars till 4. She's at home with the baby. I'm in the bar from 4:30 in the afternoon till 4:30 in the morning. I get home. Drunk. What do you think it's like for a woman with a baby at home, waiting at home for dinner for her husband? He doesn't get home until 4:30 in the morning with a baby. I want you to think about that for a second. And that was my deal. Never even considering I was doing anything wrong. I was a good guy in a good world and earning money and bringing it home and all that sort of stuff all the time. And then one Friday, after 5 years of doing this, she happened to say to me, I just want you to know, you come home drunk one more time, I'm leaving you. Okay? Now I'm going to skip the funny part of that story, if there is a funny part. I didn't even understand. Talk about delusional. She said that to me. I was as sober as I am right now. As sober as I am right now in my body, but in my mind, I'm a crazy, insane, delusional alcoholic. And I didn't even understand. I drove my car 3 blocks, and I say to myself, what the hell did she mean by that? I had no idea what she was talking about. And you know something? If you're an alcoholic, you've gone through things in your life where people told you things, you said, where the fuck did that come from? You had no idea either. You may have held down a great job, but you didn't have a clue. And I go into the bar, I told my friend Doug about that. He says, hey, she loves you. She adores you. Your wife's never going to leave you. I say, man, that's what I was thinking. And, and next thing you know, I'm drinking. I do the same thing. I get drunk. She kicks me out of the house. About I'm leaving you. She kicked me out of the house. And I'm excited because I wanted an excuse to go out with other women. And I was too chicken shit to ask for a divorce because I felt like a piece of crap. If I asked that, she kicked me out of the house. And I was... Thank you, Lord, because now I could stay in the bar and do whatever I wanted to do. And then 3 weeks later, after she filed divorce, whatever she did, she said, let's go to a marriage counselor. I think out of guilt or something. I went to the marriage counselor to show I was trying. The marriage counselor asked, tell me 3 things you want to change in Russell. And she said the 3 things. I wasn't even listening. I don't know if she said anything about drinking or whatever she said, maybe come home. I don't know, for dinner. And he asked me, and I'm thinking about this date I have, and they're dragging me back in. And what if this works? Then I'm stuck again. You know what I mean? And he says, what do you want to change about Ronnie? And I say, I just want to date other women. In front of my wife and the mother of my child. And that's the end of it. I blew up the thing and I walk out. And somebody asked me, well, why are you getting a divorce? Did it have anything to do with alcohol? I said, no. No. She said, you come home drunk, I'm going to leave. But no. He said, she just was trying to change me. I drank before she was trying to change. She didn't. We were too young. She didn't understand me. You know what I mean? We were different people from different, and I believe that. Now, if you heard the fact, and those are the cold hard facts. If you can believe that a guy was operating, trying murder cases, you know what I mean? Not a stupid guy who's sober much of the time, you know what I mean? If you believe a guy could go through that and blow up everything in his life and hurt somebody like that in his life and walk away thinking there's no problem here, I'm perfectly okay. Let me tell you what the deal is with that. If you can do that in that instance, you can do that for your entire life. In almost every area of your life for years. Guess what? Even if you're in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean? You could be 10 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous thinking you're the greatest guy in the world and you got your shit together. You know what I mean? Be conceited and think you have the power and everything, and then all of a sudden hit bottom. Maybe you drink again. Maybe something happens again, like with Bill Wilson when he went through the bottom. You can have a second bottom in AA and wake up somewhere, maybe in a church somewhere, and say, man, I got it all wrong. I didn't see this. So you can be blind by your own crap just because you pick up a medallion. Every medallion you pick up is an excuse for saying, I'm doing this thing okay. While you're hurting people and you're going down tubes, you don't even see it. And you know what? So you do the 4th step. And you get a lot out of it. 4th and 5th step, you see a lot of things. There's this great line in the Bible. I love it. That's why I love to read it, because it explains the line to me. He says, it's like a man looking in the mirror and looking at himself and then walking away and forgetting what he looks like. Can you imagine that? So you do a 4th step and say, oh man, I've done the 4th step, and you learn a lot. Maybe you change a little bit, and then you walk away, and a year later, or 6 months later, or maybe the next day, you forgot what you actually saw, or what you look like. And if that disease can get you to the point where no matter how much work you do, you not only forget what you look like, and who you really are, that you're not spiritual. You're not even close to spiritual. You know what I mean? You're not. It's just the only reason you're sober is because God somehow is working in your life or something like that, or you're doing a few things, but the bottom line is you are so far short from where you're supposed to be. And you're just resting on your laurels and heading for trouble if you do. And not even seeing yourself. And you may consistently be doing something that looks like the steps and everything like that. Not understanding that you have a disease that this disease is constantly talking to you and saying, you don't give a shit what they think about you. You don't care about this thing. You didn't do anything wrong. Constantly you do the 4th step like one time, or maybe a few 10 steps and everything like that. You got to do it. And then after a while, you're just listening to yourself. Because who knows better about you than you? You know what I mean? And you're sober 10 years or 15 years. And all of a sudden you end up drinking or you end up going down the tubes, you end up getting depressed, and you don't understand what the problem is because you're not drinking and you're going to meetings and you're sponsoring people and you're doing all that stuff. You know? This is a fact of AA life. I mean, this is no, and so what happened to me ultimately, and I don't want to get ahead of the deal because we got some other steps to go. I hit a second bottom in AA. Let me tell you something, you hit a lot of mini bottoms. You know, you hit a lot of mini bottoms, you know, little bottoms and everything. Each one maybe helps you and cuts so long. But the bottom line is, for me, is finally I had to get to the point where I had to give up the ghost and make God the central fact of my life and stop worrying about what other people think about me, whether they're talking about behind my back. And what happened is, God, in my understanding, has rules and regulations. You know, I don't have to guess. See, the God of my imagination will allow me to dump my wife and go out with another woman. The God of my imagination will allow me to cheat on my wife. My God of my imagination will allow me to do whatever I want to do, because after all, I make up the rules. You know what I mean? And I'm really good at making up the rules. And I can tell myself, I'm a rationalizer. I tell myself, rationalize. It's okay for you to do this because you help 20 people. It's okay for you to do that where nobody's perfect. Or it's, progress, not perfection. I can make up so many rules that allow me to jump through so many loopholes so I can continue to be a whore for the world. I continue to be anything. But you want something? If I pick a God that has serious rules and regulations, then let me tell you something. Alcoholics don't like rules. Did you know that? They don't like rules. They don't like people telling them rules. They don't like people even suggesting that they may have to follow rules. Hey, you got your God, I got my God. Yeah, my God allows this. That's your God and my God. Alcoholics don't like following rules. And I needed to get to specifics. You know what I mean? You know, because they say the devil's in the details. You know, sometimes God is in the details. I had to get to believing in something where it was very clear what I was doing is right, wrong or right, and what I had to do, and I had to believe in that stuff. And the problem is, if God's the central factor of your life, and you pick a God that has rules and regulations, listen, you're gonna screw up. I gotta be honest with you. I am so far from being anywhere close to not even perfect. What's lower than perfect? Like trying. You know what I mean? You know, but you want to make sure you pick a God that knows you're a whack job, but he loves you anyway. You don't have to beat your ass up, because isn't that what a sponsor's all about? Yep. He knows you're crazy and pathetic, but he loves you. You know, you want to pick one of those guys. But you want to make sure he's got rules and regulations, because isn't that what a sponsor says when you go up to him and you say blah, 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 and he says, what are you, stupid? Grow up, you know? You want to pick one of those gods that hurts your feelings, because it's your feelings that'll kill you. So, did it have anything to do with the 4-step?
Everything.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Recovery Inspiration is sitting right there waiting for you. Rocketed.org AA speaker recordings brings real voices and real stories straight to your ears. Subscribe now so you never miss a new recording dropping. Keep that motivation on tap and help spread the word. Hit subscribe and let recovery find you every single day.